my childhood.
Hello, and thank you for listening to Ruin My Childhood. I'm Kat.
And I'm Mike.
And in this episode, we are going to be talking about Free Willy.
Ooh.
I honestly don't remember much about this movie other than it had Michael Jackson, the soundtrack.
Yep.
There was a scene where the orca jumps over the artificially made reef.
Yep.
And the boy strikes a pose.
Yep, he does like a fist,
a fist pump thing.
Yeah.
And that's about it, quite honestly.
I remember really liking this movie as a kid. We did not own it, but I remember really liking this one. And I remember that because I liked this movie so much, my dad took myself and my brother to go see, and one of my cousins to see this movie when they were having, the rest of my family was having a baby shower for one of my younger cousins. And I got...
Is this the one you threw up in?
This is the movie that I threw up in and had to come home, and they made me take like a super cold shower because I had a really big fever. And then I went to the hospital for a couple of days with pneumonia. So that was Free Willy too. But I remember really liking Free Willy. I don't remember most of the plot. Like, I know most of it takes place in like a what is this place in San Diego called?
Marine World?
No, that's not Marine World. That's something else.
SeaWorld?
SeaWorld. It's in a place like SeaWorld, and they've got like this boy bonds with a whale.
Considerably less controversial back then.
Yeah, that was a big thing back then. I remember like Marine World had a couple killer whales. You had SeaWorld.
I thought it was awesome. They jump up on the side of the tank and they lay there and they strike a pose
and they do
lay
tricks,
on them.
and then there was a splash zone.
This was before we realized that they're actually like more emotionally developed than we are.
Yep.
So they're just like suffering horrible abuses by doing these things.
But
you know what's weird? I actually owned this on VHS until about 3 years ago.
Oh yeah,
I've owned it this entire time and yet never watched it.
That's funny. I remember really liking it. I remember being excited for the second one, which I did eventually see the second one. I know I saw this movie in theaters. I definitely remember seeing it in theaters. But yeah, most of the plot I can't tell you. I went on IMDb really quickly and saw that there's two different actors in this movie that are in a ton of Quentin Tarantino movies.
Ooh.
Michael Madsen, and then like some other guy who's like a character actor. And Lori Petty from Point Break is in this movie.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's also Tank Girl, so there's some talent in this movie.
Also Tank Girl.
Yeah. So I'm ready to watch it.
Yeah, I am too. Let's do this.
Okay.
A 3-ton captive whale. A 12-year-old street kid.
What's Free Willy?
An adventure you'll never forget.
Go, Willy, go!
Free Willy.
All right. We are back from watching Free Willy. What did you think, Mike?
I liked it. I didn't love it, but this wasn't like, I remember really liking this movie as a kid, but I think I only saw it once or twice. So I didn't really remember it. Like, I didn't remember any of this movie like at all. All I remembered was the big jump at the end of the movie. So I was basically going.
The only thing I remembered was the scene where the whale like rams the glass when it's supposed to be performing because it's all freaked out
and scares the kids.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't remember any of this movie at all. I was going in blind, basically.
Do you want to give a brief synopsis?
Yeah, this one's pretty easy to summarize, I think. So basically, in a nutshell, there's this like kid who's like super generic 90s white kid. In fact, I was like, this kid kind of looks like the Blank Check kid, even though he really doesn't. He's just super generic.
They've both got the same little elf face.
Yeah. So basically, like, this is like a little like street urchin kid, and he's like stealing from people, not stealing from people, but he's like panhandling, and then he steals food from a restaurant, and then he's like graffitiing like a warehouse. Cops chase him. He ends up hiding in the amusement park and graffitis the killer whale tank and gets scared by the whale. Cops catch him, and then they decide he's got a really cool social worker who gets him off the hook for doing these like terrible things. So all he gets is like community service cleaning the graffiti that he did. And then he kind of bonds with this killer whale named Willy. And meanwhile, the park is trying to make money off this whale, but he's like too old to be captured, and he's in a tank that's too small. and Lori Petty from Point Break, and Tank Girl is like the trainer, and she basically teaches him how to be a trainer. And then at the end of the movie, they find out that the owners are going to they sabotage the tank to kill Willy because they don't think they're going to be able to make a profit off of it. So they bust Willy out and get him to the ocean.
Sweet.
That might have been my shortest synopsis ever.
I think that was your shortest synopsis ever.
I'm working
Hang on,
on it.
This mic is behaving very strangely. All right. Yeah, pretty sure that was your shortest synopsis ever.
I've been working on it.
So, my takeaway from the beginning of this movie was lots of whale shots.
Yeah, that's one of the notes I wrote. I put lots of whales. Guys using nets to capture said whales.
I mean, I forgot just how sad this entire movie was.
Yeah, I didn't really remember it at all, but yeah, it is. And us being adults and knowing so much more about killer whales, like we know a lot more about whales now than we did 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago when this movie came out, and now it's just
not even
sad.
just the whale situation, like the kids situation.
That's true.
Now, like having the life experience I do with foster kids and knowing just how like screwed up the situation is, like this kid obviously has a really rough life and he's kind of held in limbo. And like I actually went to summer camp with a kid who was like this, where their parent was obviously never going to get them back, and yet they kept keeping it in their heads that, oh, I'm going to come back and get you. I'm going to come back and get you. When in reality, like, it's just not going to happen. Right. And I totally don't remember that ever being a factor in this movie at all. You know, I just erased it from my memory.
The other thing that's confusing for this kid, I can't remember what his name is. I don't think I actually took down his name. Jesse. His name is Jesse. I did take it down.
Jesse.
His stepfather, or not his stepfather,
Wish
but his...
that I had Jesse's whale.
Aw. But it would be really confusing. I would be confused if I was him, because his foster father is Michael Madsen, who always plays bad guys in Quentin Tarantino movies. That's really confusing, too.
How can you trust him?
No, how could you?
Oh, man. Just toying with his emotions.
Right. Although,
for shame.
Michael Madsen in this movie as the foster father, Glenn, actually was a really great guy throughout the entire movie. Like,
right.
This kid was incredibly lucky that this foster family was the one who took him in.
Right. Like, he's just blatantly being a total prick to them, and they're kind of just like looking at each other like, where do you even start with this kind of situation? Because obviously with a teenage child who's in the foster system, like, there are gonna be behavioral issues and they're gonna push you, but if you draw a hard line, you're just gonna screw up the relationship. So they kind of have to like let him walk all over them. And
I think they did the balance pretty well, though. Like, they asked him what he needed, and they gave him a little bit of freedom with a curfew, and I think they did a pretty good job. Like, ultimately, he came to respect the family, and when they got in that argument towards the middle of the movie, he freaked out because he was like, this is the first time he's had stability in his life, and then they're fighting. So I think they did a good job.
But, I mean, he did break that custom pane of glass.
Yeah, that was expensive. He had a beautiful view of the Oregon
God, he had
ocean
like
side.
The sweetest bedroom of all time, like a bedroom to rival Arnold's from Hey Arnold.
The other thing I thought was funny about this movie is, so they had like the gang of like street kids at the beginning of the movie, and his best friend, who only shows up like 2 or 3 times in the movie, he looks really young, but that kid was 20 years old, that actor, and he's also he's in a ton of Quentin Tarantino movies. Normally it's just like the generic guy. Like, he's also in he's been in like every Quentin Tarantino movie since like anything past Pulp Fiction. It's crazy. 20 years old. And he looked like he was like 12.
Dang.
Although I looked like I was 14, 15 when I was 20, so I get it.
You did. I mean, I'm 30 and I still play teenagers.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm 30. Almost. So, fairly early on in the movie, the kid kind of begins his relationship with Willy and starts going, above ground and kind of like dipping his hand into the tank and getting to know him. And then
very reckless.
He hears the whale like making these sad noises, and then he realizes he's talking to his family in the nearby bay, and it's like, it's so freaking sad.
And then he plays the harmonica.
And it was sad. Right, like, this movie was sad back then, But like now, just knowing so much more about whales and how, well, pretty much all animals in, what is it, Delphiniae family are far more emotionally complex, and the parts of the brain that control emotion are way more developed than ours. Like, I can't even just imagine what these animals go through.
Right.
It's so freaking sad. There were several points in this movie where I almost cried.
Oh, I didn't almost
Aw.
cry, but no, I've done. I actually did a report on Delphinidae, so dolphins and orcas, and yeah, it's very true. Like,
Didn't I do that report with you?
no, you weren't in that class with me. You didn't. You and I did one on Venus flytraps.
I think that was in the same class.
No, you weren't.
That was in zoology.
You weren't in my zoology class.
Yes, I
I
was.
only had one. I had 2 classes with you. I had botany, and I had that history class.
I thought I was in zoology with you.
Nope, because my partner in that class was Josh.
I don't know who Josh is.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. But no, they're very, very emotionally developed, and like their fin, like they only really see fins that curve over, like flop over, with dolphins and orcas that have been in captivity. So
Right. What was the orca in this movie? Kiko?
Kiko, yep.
Was Kiko related to Tilikum?
No, I don't think there were. I mean, I don't know for sure. So basically, this whale was in Mexico. So most of the whales in this movie were actually animatronic. And then,
Yeah.
of course, that leap over the retaining wall or the ocean wall was actually a CG whale, which is very dated
It looks
now.
pretty
It looks
good,
pretty
honestly.
for 90s, but yeah, it's
Right.
dated now. But I didn't notice
Like the
it.
shot leading up to it where the whale is sort of charging the reef before it jumps over, like it jumps and it looks like it's just going to land on the reef because the perspective is a little bit wonky. When it's sailing over his head, that looks great still. And then once it flies over on the other side, you get that shot where it's landing and that just looks terrible.
Yeah, the CG
it's
ocean.
it's like going from The Little Mermaid to the Little Mermaid sequels.
I don't know. The Little Mermaid, we watched it a few years ago, and her head changed size like 16 times throughout the movie.
Oh, well, I thought they did a great job with the animatronic whales. They still look good.
Never realized it was. I wouldn't have known it was animatronic unless I happened to go on IMDb and look at the trivia, and it was like 80% of shots were animatronics. I was like, what? No way.
I mean, like, obviously they did have a real whale in parts of this, but when you think long and hard about it, that would have been a pretty rigorous shooting
definitely
schedule for a
would've.
whale.
Yeah.
I don't think they, like, even as abusive as the situation was, I don't think they would have done that.
Well, the thing that's crazy about this, so at the end of the movie, there's a phone number, so you can like make donations to helping killer whales, and I actually called that number as we were watching the movie. It is disconnected now, so if anybody goes through and watches the movie, don't bother calling the phone number.
Reconnect it, raise some money, save the whales.
But they they raised $20 million for whale habitats and stuff like that off of this movie. And
But wait, didn't it cost $20 million to release that whale?
I don't know how much it cost. So basically,
I'm pretty sure it cost $20 million to release Kiko, and then he died
like
a year later.
So
It's so sad.
this whale was living in Mexico, and then after this movie, people went to go visit him, and they noticed his tank was too small, even though that was a big part of this movie. He had psoriasis, so they flew him to Oregon, and they built like a custom tank for him, and he was there for another like 15 years. And yeah, in
Right, so, like,
2002, they released
A
him.
main plot point in the film is that the tank is too small for this whale.
Correct.
Like the SEAL trainer woman, who is also in Point Break, she talks explicitly about how the tanks are too small. She talks about all these issues that, like, these are problems with how they're keeping these whales, and yet the crew and the people who own this whale were doing the same thing in real life to this whale that was in this movie.
Correct. Yeah, it's pretty messed up.
It's totally screwed up.
So it was like 1999 or something like that is when they moved him. So it was still like 4 or 5 years after the movie when they finally moved him. And then 3 years after they moved him, they flew him to like Iceland to let him go. And then he like died in Norway.
Well, and I think that they had originally captured him in Iceland.
Damn, why would they fly him all the way to Mexico? That's a pretty long flight / sail.
I guess
whatever
it's
they did.
whoever has the money, and
Yes.
like they don't always end up in their long-term habitat the first time. Like different exhibits will buy different animals.
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
It's totally sad.
So you're saying these
poor
whales
thing.
are basically like foster children.
It's so sad. Well, and I think the problem with Kiko when they released him was that he had spent so long in captivity that he was really addicted to human contact.
Yes.
And so the entire time that he was released until he died, he was being fed daily, I think, by humans.
Yeah,
and that's part of the reason why his release was so expensive, because he could not be independent.
Well, yeah,
and part of the problem was probably, like, even though they released him, I think they released him in the region where they captured him. Dolphins they have really strong cultural ties.
Correct.
So if you take a dolphin or an orca or any creature from that family and try and put them into a pod from a different region, they don't speak the same language.
They don't. They have different hunting
and so
techniques.
I would
everything.
imagine, yeah, they have different techniques and everything. And I would imagine with how their brains are so much more developed than ours, and we have so many problems, with culture shock, I can imagine that with them it has to be even worse.
Well,
so of course he was going to have problems adapting even if he wasn't in captivity for a long time.
They tried to do it slowly, so they built him a sea kind of thing, so he wasn't in like a tank anymore. Like they had him in the ocean for a couple years before they released him in like a giant ocean sanctuary. So they tried to give him baby steps but it didn't really work out. But getting back to
the whole thing makes me so sad.
Getting back to the movie, one of the things that bothered me is I've worked for several retail places, and I've opened up several retail chains. So this isn't retail, but I'm gonna use some of my experience. So I opened up a movie theater. I opened up a couple different smaller clothing store outlets, and I helped open a Target and stuff, like a couple Targets. And so I know, you don't just open things, you do soft openings. And something that really bothered me was, they were having issues with this whale. And at one point, the owners were like, oh, we're going to have to spend $100,000 to build this tank bigger. And, we still haven't even got him to be able to be trained. Like, they're coming down on Lori Petty pretty hard about not being able to train. And they see him one time do a trick with Jesse. And they're like,
well, no, hang on. You're skipping a big part. So Jesse forms this bond with this whale and starts realizing that, like, the whale's obviously absorbed some of the training. It's just uncooperative. But the whale bonds with Jesse and is willing to do these tricks for him. So he and this whale are kind of like developing their own language throughout the beginning of the movie. And then he is able to get this whale to do these tricks consistently. And then what's-her-face happens upon them interacting, and that's where the idea comes from of having him do the presentation.
Right. So,
which definitely violates some child labor laws.
But what my point is, the owners see them do this one time,
right.
And they're like, "Oh, we're gonna have this show," and then they just,
"Can you do it again?
Can you do
He's
it again?"
Like, well, yeah.
But they don't. They should have done. So what they end up doing is they start advertising that they've got this whale show, and everyone's all excited. They've got this huge audience, and then they've also got. Would be super confusing for this whale who's only ever been around 2 or 3 people at a time, and then coming out of the water seeing hundreds of people. But then they also had a bunch of kids in the observation deck banging on the glass. So this is like traumatic for this whale. So instead of having a soft opening and doing a couple of shows, the smaller audience to see how it goes, they do this big sold out event, and this whale
I don't even think
out.
they make him replicate the routine before they do the grand opening.
They did. That's my point.
He just does it the one time.
Exactly. That's my point. They did it one time
for 2 people.
With a couple of people, and now all of a sudden they're upset that he doesn't really behave. And Lori Petty, I don't remember her character's name, I was like, oh, sometimes they get a little shy. This is his first time doing this in front of an audience. Like, they should not have had a giant audience like that. Maybe have like an employee meeting so just like people who work at the park can see this because they haven't seen it before, and do something like, or a friends and family night. So you just have friends and family of people who work at the park coming, so it's a smaller crowd to see if it works. But this was really irresponsible. So at that point, they decide to sabotage the tank and kill him so they can get the insurance money.
Right. Well, it doesn't work one time. So, I mean, like, they already screwed it up by doing that, but then they don't try and remedy the situation at all. They're just like, we'll kill the whale.
Right?
You jump straight to murder? What?
Right. So, we haven't even touched upon any one of these main characters. There's also a Native American man who works at the park and teaches Jesse about the whales and teaches them about. He gives them a few like prayers and everything, and
it's like super formulaic, like stereotypical Native American, like, oh, they're all so in touch with nature and mystical and magical. Like, can't we just have a Native American character in a movie?
No.
Who isn't some kind of shaman?
No.
It's just, mildly racist and insulting.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, yeah, basically they end up breaking this whale out of the park, and they go through and they get stuck in the mud, and then they call the foster father, and then he gets his truck and like hauls it out of the mud, and then it's pretty crazy. There's a point where the owners find out what's going on, and they like get a posse and they like block the road.
Well, no. Hang on. So, the tank was already damaged from Willy freaking out during the show and ramming the glass when those kids were pounding on the glass. So then they see this opportunity and they sabotage the tank by by welding and removing a couple of bolts, and apparently this weakens the tank enough that an entire panel of glass just kind of falls out into the observation room. And the tank is like draining, and Jesse sees this, like he witnesses this, and he wakes up what's her face, Lori Petty, and
he gets Randall.
Randall. So he gets them and he's like, here's what's up, we need to handle this. They focus on getting the whale out of the tank and apparently have no plan for where they're gonna put the whale until he's already out.
Well, yeah. Well, Lori Petty tries to talk them out of doing it, actually, and they're like, there's no time. This is like what we got to do. He tried to kill him. Like, they really don't know that that's what happened. Like, Randall, the Native American, basically is like, they must have sabotaged us. So they really don't know what happened.
Yeah, but I mean, like, either way, they've got to get him out of the tank and they've got to get him into a large body of water.
The thing is,
it's just odd that they would like hoist him out and then be like, okay, now what?
Well, I actually have a couple problems with it. So one, it wasn't a whole pane that came out of glass. It was just like leaking. Like, they could have got a welder in there. It would have been like safer and faster just to get a welder in there. And
no, the whole thing eventually broke out.
Eventually did it? I think that was like after they got him out, but I feel like they could have done that. But my problem is Michael Madsen's character, I think his name was Glenn. Yeah, Glenn. They eventually get him to help out, and they go to like the dry docks.
Wait, no, hang on. So then they have the whale out on the deck, and they're like, what do we do? And then this kid is like, I know, I will steal my stepfather's tow truck. And these two adults completely aid and abet the situation.
Right.
You know what? They could have been like, they could have called up Glenn and been like, I know this sounds crazy, but can we borrow your truck? Because we've got a whale and it needs to get in the water. Just like ask questions later. Like, Glenn would have been down with that. He would have been totally cool with it. They could have avoided this whole situation.
Well,
or they could have just dropped the orca into the seal tank and, like eaten the cost of the seals, so to speak. But instead, they just go this entirely reckless route. Then they almost drive Glenn's tow truck off of a hillside because the road is blocked, and then they try and reverse, and apparently dude can't drive. So then they contact Glenn, and Glenn goes out, and at no point does he like say to the adults like, why did you let this happen? He just jumps in. He's like, oh, I handled this situation.
Well, he had to at that point. But eventually, it's like he takes over, and like somehow all the owners and their cronies get there first, and he like screw it and guns it, and like goes to ram them. They jump out of the way, and he like sinks his truck into the ocean.
You're not giving any context for where they are.
They're like blocking the road.
They go to the marina.
I said that already.
No, you didn't. You say they get to the place.
No, I said they got to like the docks.
No, you didn't.
Anyway, they get to the marina, the docks, and they go to block the way, and he rams them. They get out of the way. He like blows through a gate.
He doesn't ram them.
He goes
They
to
don't
ram at
die.
them. He's going
What?
right towards them. His intent was to ram them. They get out of the way. He goes through a gate, sinks his truck into the ocean, and Willy goes away. So eventually, it all works out. They start chasing, like, they try to corner Willy with, like, boats and nets and stuff, and Jesse, like, with his harmonica, gets him to, like, go along a different path and jump over the wall. And, the movie is happy and ends, and they just, like, get in their truck, and they're like, let's go home. There's no way that they weren't, like, even though they were in the right, that they were not getting arrested. All of them. Because they
I don't agree with you on this, because I think they could have played it off like it was the middle of the night. Jesse alerted them because he saw that the tank was leaking. They had to act fast and get the whale to a different body of water. I think they legitimately, in a court of law, could have played it off. And I don't think that they would have been arrested if a police officer...
in that moment.
No. I think if a police officer had shown up and some dude was like, they stole my whale, the police officer would be like, all right, you're gonna go spend the night in the drunk tank.
No, I think this is exactly what would have happened in two rich white males in America would have been like, why didn't they call us? They didn't call us.
It's Oregon, not Texas.
This is Oregon in the 90s at the height of the meth issue. Meth was invented in Oregon, okay? So, two rich white males would have been like, what the hell? They stole this thing. They've been trying to undermine this entire time.
But then they could have countered immediately with like, okay, we're playing this off, but they tried to kill the whale and it was insurance fraud. So either way, proof, like everyone would have had to go downtown.
Exactly.
And
That's
my
point.
I don't think they would have just booked them and then been like, you're going to spend the night in jail and then we'll sort this out.
My point is they would have been detained or asked to come in for. They wouldn't just be able to drive off from that scene and go home and be happy. That never would have happened.
I mean, everyone would have been detained.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point.
But I understand why the dude wouldn't have called the cops, because immediately they're going to figure out that it was insurance fraud. Jig is up. Like, he's not going to give himself up that easily. But no, the tank was damaged and they rammed it. Like, it started as a slow leak, and I'm sure they've got security cameras and stuff, because that's how they got caught. They knew that, like, the cops knew the kids were in there. There was a small leak initially, and he got rammed. They would have been like, we didn't do anything. We were nowhere near this when it happened. It would have been like Scooby-Doo. Like, we would have got away with it if it weren't for you meddling kids. I don't think he got caught because of security cameras.
Well, they knew the cops knew they were there. It doesn't matter. I don't think.
No, because remember at the beginning of the movie, he gets caught because he trips the alarm when he goes into the door.
Oh, that's right.
You see the thing flashing as soon as he goes in. There were no cameras, and honestly, like after the whale had rammed the glass, you could easily say, "Yeah, the tank got damaged and metal atrophies." And
exactly, that's my point. Our protagonists had no way of knowing for sure that this happened. They didn't have any conversation, or they didn't have, like, they never saw an insurance premium. They never saw, like,
no, Jesse saw it happening.
He didn't see them actually
Yes, he did.
No, he just came by to...
Yes, he did.
No, he just came by to...
He was there. He came by to see the whale, and he happened to see them sabotage the tank.
I didn't...
He jumped in there like 2 seconds after. He totally saw it happen.
I felt like he just happened to go by to say, and he saw the leak. And then I thought Randall just guessed that that's what happened.
No, he saw it happen.
I'm going to look this up really quick, because I don't remember that at all.
Just watch it.
I'm just going to go and look at the synopsis.
Just pull it up on Netflix.
It's not...
The synopsis is not going to say it.
Right, give me a second.
It's on Netflix, Michael. Will you just listen to me the first time? Because whenever you don't, it doesn't work out in your favor.
I'm right most of the time.
Bull... poo.
Anyway, agree to disagree.
You can't even find it.
I'm going to look it up on the Wikipedia.
You just found it, didn't you?
I didn't.
And you don't like the answer.
Well, no. So with Remake Rewind, we do this thing where we read the synopses now for the summaries. And there's like another section that
disagreeable.
Has a long form synopsis that's like very detailed, or just like a little like paragraph thing. And this one doesn't have both.
Oy vey, just pull it up.
I'm working on it. I'm pulling it up right now.
I told you to pull up on Netflix.
It's going to take too long, and then I got to fast forward through all that stuff.
So? Why are you so lazy?
And Let's see. Jesse notices Willy's family calling to him and Dow's assistant. Wait, oh no, yeah, you're right. He noticed. He noticed people going into the observation area.
He saw it happen.
So anyway, that's what happened. Anything else you want to talk about in this movie?
I just want to add that it's super rude of those kids to have stolen that cake from that caterer. Like, they could have gone to Safeway and stolen a cake. Instead, they had to ruin this caterer's entire gig.
That's a small business.
Caterer, right. Small business owner. Like, why you gotta hit the little guy? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
These kids are jerks.
I think I just want to end this with saying that that kid had it good. The guy, they gave him allowance, and they didn't even give him chores. He wanted to have a couch with him. The kid had it really good. Had a great
And, like,
room.
honestly, he wasn't restricted from seeing his street urchin friends, but he kind of just, like, didn't have anything to do with them after he went to his foster home.
He saw the 20-year-old kid once, and he's like, nah, I've got a pretty good thing going. Like, I think he realized that he got a really good thing going, and he, like, doesn't want to go back into that life.
I feel like this was a missed opportunity. Like, he could have been a good example. Instead, he's like, peace.
Yeah, he didn't want the street rat.
Jesse's a jerk.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like, I don't know why, but something about seeing him, like, walk around in salty water in his Air Jordans the entire movie just, like, made me cringe. I don't even like Air Jordans. Like, I don't see the point of fancy shoes like that. That still bugged me.
There's a few things that in this movie are kind of interesting. So, you kind of mentioned earlier there had to be a violation of, like, child labor laws, but there's also, like, at one point they're doing a medical exam on this whale.
He would have had to have a work permit, and I don't think his foster parents would have been able to acquire a work permit for him.
I think he would have been too. I mean, I don't know Oregon state laws. Like, all labor laws are different based off
that
the
would
state.
have fallen underneath performance, though. And for performance, like, you have to have a Coogan account for the kid and all kinds. Like, it's super complicated for your child to work in entertainment. And, like, I feel like this would fall under entertainment.
Unless they tried to make it under, like, agriculture because it's livestock, like they categorized it like that. Because then you don't need a work permit for that.
Isn't orca livestock, Michael?
No, but maybe they did some. They had obviously corrupt owners. Maybe the corrupt owners did the paperwork.
In the event that we should acquire an orca later in life, would we qualify for that livestock tax credit?
I don't know, but anyway. So he also, like you mentioned, it's like super dangerous, but he routinely goes out there by himself. Like, the reason he got this bond with the whale is because he went out there at night when he wasn't supposed to. He ran on the pool deck, which you never run on a pool deck.
Right.
And he slipped, like, hit his head and fell into the tank, and the whale luckily saved him. And that's when,
I mean, like, real life, the orca probably, like, especially an orca having behavioral issues, probably would have dragged him down to the bottom and drowned him and then waited to maybe
actually, there are like
something.
no reports of orcas doing anything with humans. In fact, in nature, there are numerous reports of whales driving off sharks, actually helping people in boats. Like,
that's
orcas
so nice.
are actually, like, don't do anything to humans. They've helped out humans quite a bit in nature, just like on their own.
They don't rape them like other dolphins do.
No, they don't. Like,
you sure?
They're good people. They're sea pandas.
They're sea pandas. Yeah, I was telling you this the other day. Like, when I see people call orcas killer whales, like, something inside me just bristles and I feel all defensive. Like, they're not killer whales.
But the other thing this kid does
nice.
that's super risky, and he could have killed a lot of people doing this. So there's a point where they're doing a medical exam on the whale, and Lori Petty's like up on her high horse, like, this place is too small, this exam doesn't work, and they're instead of helping people do the exam. And the kid goes up, and he, like, kicks a pulley, so the whale, like, 1/4 of the, like, the harness that the whale's in just falls.
Right.
And then so the rest of them have to go and, like, cut the ropes down to get him out, or they're gonna fall. Like, he could have killed, like, half a dozen people by, you know, dropping this. I think they said it was like an 8-ton whale or a 4-ton. I can't remember. I think they said 3-ton. By dropping this, 6,000 to 8,000 pound animal on these people. Like, this kid is
I thought he was
reckless.
6,000 pounds.
Yeah, I don't remember what they said. They said 3 tons, so yeah, 6,000 pounds. He could have killed these people.
Right.
I mean, this kid's a jerk.
This kid was totally a jerk.
Well, do you have anything else to say? Because we're well past that half-hour mark.
I mean, like, despite all of the things that we just pointed out about it that we really didn't like, I really liked this movie. Like, I think it was entertaining. It held up really well. It still held my attention, and I think it still had some pretty good messages.
Yeah.
And I think, now that we know more about the situations with orcas and wildlife preservation, it's even more poignant.
Like I said, I didn't really remember this movie too much, and as an adult, it was able to maintain my attention. I just don't know if as a kid, like, I'm surprised that as a kid I was able to maintain this. Like, it's a pretty slow plot. Like, there's not a lot of stuff going on, so it's a little slow, but I did enjoy it. But maybe that just had something to do with animals being in it.
Right. And I mentioned this before. It's a phenomenon that you have to account for in pretty much all acting performances. If there is a cat on the film screen or a cat on the stage, the entire audience is going to be watching that cat. Because it's the most authentic thing on the screen, and people are drawn to authenticity. So even when you're watching a bad performance, you're still looking for the truth in that performance, and I think that is part of the reason that animals are so captivating to watch. So honestly, even a bad movie with animals in it is still going to be pretty enjoyable. And I think part of just having an animal, especially an amazing animal like an orca in a film, is what kept our attention as kids, and part of what made this such an incredibly successful film. And really, I think, helped spur this movement to start some really good, powerful, important research and advocacy for orcas and whales in general.
Yeah. I mean, this movie made a ton of money. So it cost $20 million and it made $153 million, almost $154 million. So it was huge in terms of the public eye and bringing this stuff to like the forefront. Like, that's made more money than a lot of movies make nowadays.
It made huge strides, and I don't think anything else has made such an impact on the situation for marine wildlife other than blackfish, probably.
Yeah.
So, even devoid of any other entertainment value, this movie was really important, and I think it definitely made a difference in pop culture.
I agree.
All right. So, what are we watching next?
So we were watching a documentary about Robin Hood not too long ago, or you were watching
The Real
when you were
Robin
telling me
Hood.
about it.
I was watching
The
a
Real Robin
documentary
Hood.
that I tried to get you to watch numerous times that you refused.
And then I came in on the tail end of it, and we decided that we were gonna watch the Disney version of Robin Hood with the fox and the animal version.
Disney's animated Robin Hood.
So yeah, that'll be cool.
Because I'm pretty sure Disney did another Robin Hood, like in the 60s, right?
I don't think so.
Pretty sure they did.
I don't know, maybe.
And I think it had like bright green tights.
Maybe. I don't know.
Probably.
I'm not sure for sure, but it is the only one with the fox.
I love Robin Hood. I love Robin Hood in all incarnations. So I'm excited, and I loved this movie when I was a kid. It definitely is going to bring back some warm fuzzies.
Good.
Good.
So, Katrina, where can our listeners follow you?
I am all over the internet at Katrina Ossity, especially my YouTube channel. Go check it out.
And you can check out everything that's MDXpods at MDXpods.com, on Instagram and Twitter at MDXpods. And feel free to support us on Patreon, where we recently revamped it, took down a lot of old posts, and we're going to be a lot more vigilant about like maintaining it. In fact, we're going to be making sure that every episode of Remake Rewind and Ruin My Childhood are up at least a day early on Patreon. So check that out, support us there, and you can get these episodes early.
Early access.
Nice.
Woo!
And that's it.
That's it.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.